Well, what a game. It's the final word. Champions Trophy Daily, brought to you by McInnes Whiskey. I'm Cam Ponsonby, and I'm joined by Danyal Rasool from Cricinfo. 350, not enough in Lahore. And to talk you through all of it is Danyal in 30 seconds.
The Gaddafi wasn't really sure what to expect or even what they wanted from this match. There were a few people who weren't sure who to cheer for. They cheered when names they recognized came up. And one of them was Ben Duckett, obviously, a friend of the PSL, done well in Pakistan, has a good record both in Tests and T20s. Here he showed what he could do in ODIs, 165, the highest score in Champions Trophy history. Australia were playing with a bowler light, and it looked like that was going to cost them because England essentially, even though this was a very flat pitch, ran up well above par. I thought 320 or so would have been par. And then in the second innings, it looked like game over when England took two early wickets. Travis Head, Steve Smith, obviously. Those two fell early. You thought maybe Australia didn't quite have the pedigree to pull off a huge chase. But then when it comes to Australia and when it comes to ICC tournaments, it's a boring thing to say, but you really can't write them off. You had contributions right down the order from everyone else. Matthew Short, Labuschagne was quicker, showed more intent, and then towards the end, obviously, the two wicket keepers, Josh Inglis, Alex Carey, and Glenn Maxwell. That's what they came for, and that's what they got towards the end. And it was pretty comfortable for Australia. Win by 5 wickets, 15 balls to go, off to another good start at an ICC event.
I thought this was kind of one-day cricket at close to its best. It was so much fun. It was such good to watch. I didn't intend to kind of, obviously, keep a very close track of the game when you're doing these, but 9 hours is a long time to sit down and watch a cricket match, and you normally kind of fritter in and out. Today, everything was fantastic. Ben Duckett's innings was wonderful. Watching Joe Root back in kind of that high cruising speed gear that kind of England have missed so much, and what made that 2015 to 2019 side so good. Witnessing that again. Then Australia come out and you go, right, 2 early wickets. I think they were 40 for 2, 27 for 2, with Mark Wood bowling. I think it's the fastest ODI spell in England's history. Everything was averaging over 90 miles an hour. Caught that slip by Duckett, and it's like hit him in the chest. And you think, well, 350 is so many. It's too many. No matter what happens, no matter how well Australia bats here, they will lose 2 wickets, they'll lose a wicket, and the rate will go up, and they'll just fall short. But then Josh Inglis, a name that is impossible to pronounce, too many soft syllables, plays the innings of his life for 120 not out. So let me give you some quick scores on the doors. The official numbers: England finished 351 for 8 after their 50 overs. Ben Duckett with 165, the highest score in Champions Trophy history. Overtaking who? Danyal Rasool?
Nathan Astle, 145 not out against who else? The United States.
Of course, that famous Champions Trophy nation. Nathan Astle, kind of the Quentin Tarantino of cricket, just popping up everywhere throughout history without having, as far as I'm aware, kind of all I know he does is he's a bowler who scores massive hundreds. Doesn't really make sense. Maybe that's wrong. Anyway, and then in reply, Australia get 300. They win by 5 wickets with 15 balls to spare. Josh Inglis, 120 not out of 86. Alex Carey with 69 of 63. Matthew Short with 63 of 66. And Maurice Blackburn with a runnable 47. I think the first place I want to start, Danyal, is Lahore. New stadium. There was a lot of concern going into this competition about whether the ground would be ready, kind of what type of appetite for this tournament there was going to be. Stands were full. Atmosphere was great match. As an event, how was it to be at?
Do you know, this is the match more than any Pakistan game that I kept getting asked tickets for. People asked if anyone had tickets because this was this was the one where I think the websites crashed early. This was the one where demanded physical ticket centers was overwhelmed. And one of the things some of the fans said was, we do have the opportunity to watch Pakistan now quite a lot, but we didn't think we'd get to see matches like Australia against England at a venue like Lahore. And that's what made this occasion special. And remember, of course, that the Gaddafi Stadium, despite being beautifully built now and despite having a lot of money spent on it, may not get to host a Pakistan game given the start Pakistan have made. The only way that happens is if they reach the semi-final. Pakistan had banked on potentially hosting India here for obvious reasons. That hasn't happened. So this was the biggest game.
Didn't realise that was a thing.
Yeah, this is the game that they were banking on essentially as the one that they wanted to see, and it hasn't disappointed. The one thing I liked a lot towards the last 30 minutes, 40 minutes or so is you see crowds leaving after 43, 44 overs to try and beat the rush, and you had a lot of people who pulled up in front of the exits, but then they just didn't want to leave because something would happen. Josh Inglis would hit a huge six that got him to 100. And then, of course, no one really wants to leave while Glenn Maxwell is batting. He's the one who got the biggest cheer when he came out to bat. And if you've waited 93 overs, you're not going to leave without watching Maxwell do what he's been doing around the world but never had the chance to do in Pakistan. So I think there's a deep sense of satisfaction from the crowd because this time around, their reasons for watching this game were so pure. They didn't essentially want a team to win. They weren't in there for patriotism. They were just in there because this was supposed to be on paper a very good cricket game, and in practice, often those sorts of games turn out to be damp squibs. But this one very much wasn't. By a country mile, the best game of this Champions Trophy so far, and it will take some beating.
And in terms of the competition as a whole, I think I'm guilty of this as much as anyone else. Because there is such a saturated kind of cricket market, games come thick and fast. We all kind of roll our eyes and go, oh, doesn't mean anything. Even in the build up to this competition, you're like, what does it mean? Oh, it's another ICC trophy. They roll around every year. Do people really care? And I've kind of been catching myself a little bit and thinking, hang on, it's 2 weeks. There's 8 excellent teams. Jeopardy on every game. This is fun. This is good. Why don't I like this? If we're going to have a streamlined kind of cricket calendar at some point, surely this is actually, rather than the first thing to go, should be the first thing that's kept in terms of giving cricket with context, where even if it is just a middling tournament where it's not the World Cup, it doesn't matter as much. So far, it's felt like a real event and a kind of a competition that has been enjoyed and being watched and producing high quality cricket. Is that me just producing propaganda, or does that feel like a fairly fair assessment? What do you think?
I think the thing that hurt the Champions Trophy was the changing format of the World Cup. So once the World Cup is just 10 teams,
Yeah.
having an 8-team Champions Trophy sort of takes away the value of it. The fact that
Yes.
the World Cup is now moving to a 14-team format, I think will help the Champions Trophy if the
Yeah.
ICC, in their infinite wisdom, don't get rid of it again. Um, while so in that sense, the Champions Trophy I think does have value because all we hear is we need ODI cricket with context, and I don't think it gets more
Yeah.
contextual and consequential than you lose one game and then effectively every other game becomes a knockout.
Yeah.
There's something riding on every game. There's an ICC trophy to be had at the end of it. And the one thing people forget, I think, is in South Asia especially, it doesn't matter if it's not December or January. It doesn't matter if it is in the summer. Every month is cricket season as long as you put a tournament on. If you've got a tournament, even if you've got a triangular series like Pakistan played New Zealand and South Africa, the crowds were full here. So having a Champions Trophy in Pakistan will always matter to people here because they know not to take hosting ICC events for granted.
Mm.
And as we've seen this tournament, we know how much of a hassle it is convincing everyone to come to Pakistan, even if one notable exception does not.
I was getting myself down a rabbit hole that I eventually concluded was a bad idea. Whereas your point about if it's a 10-team World Cup, 8-team Champions Trophy, like what are we doing? Like it's much for muchness. And then I was going, could actually the Champions Trophy be a T20 competition? If you're growing the game and through T20, so your T20 World Cup is 16 teams, then 20 teams, and it keeps getting bigger. Then you have the 8-team Champions Trophy. That could be fun. But then I thought that's even more reason why there wouldn't be ODI cricket. And although I understand the arguments that make me sad, but I do sometimes agree with them about maybe cricket's future is short format, long format. You get rid of the one in the middle. That makes me sad. I don't like the fact I can see reasons within that argument. I could see a world. I could see the sands of cricket shifting and how a calendar could come together. Anyway, to talk about this match in particular, England have been criticised a lot of late for their white ball cricket, and rightly so. They have, to be blunt about it, been bad. They've been a bad ODI side. They're losing a lot of matches. Their record since the 2023 World Cup and including the 2023 World Cup is very poor. Are they deserving of criticism on this occasion, or was it a case of a high quality cricket match where one team was lost? Because it feels my instinct is if someone plays the innings of their life, as Josh Inglis has done, it's then hard to necessarily lay blame at the feet of the opposition for being poor if someone's had to perform so well to overcome them. Or is that me being soft?
I think it's always tricky to find the right balance between has someone played exceptionally well or have they been given the opportunity to play exceptionally well. To some extent, I thought England in the middle overs, there's a couple of bowlers who could have bowled better. I don't even necessarily think Adil Rashid was quite as penetrating as he can be. And
Okay.
the fact that Dryden Goss had a bit of a mare for at least the first 6 overs meant England initially had a problem with their fifth bowler, but then in the end they ended up continuing to have that problem even after 10 overs had been bowled by Liam Livingstone and Joe Root. So once, if I think when you go in batting heavy, and then you end up having a problem with one of your frontline bowlers as well, that can be an issue that maybe you could criticize the management for in terms of getting the balance wrong. But at the same time, you have to look at Australia as well. They came into this tournament with no Pat Cummins, no Mitch Stark, no Josh Hazlewood. So if you look at England's bowling, potentially you've got Wood, you've got Archer, you've got Rashid, you've got Bryden Cast. That's not a bad ODI bowling lineup to have. And one of the things maybe I could potentially criticize them for is only 82 runs in the final 10 overs when they had a really good platform. Could they have pushed on to
Yeah. Okay.
370, 375? If the batting is what you're banking on to win you games, then maybe you can't just look at what's par. You have to go over and above that because with a weaker bowling attack, the other side might also potentially go well above par. So I think those are the calculations that they might look back at and drew. I don't think it's a disaster or a disgrace of any kind, but in games where there are fine margins and when you're playing a side as clutch as Australia in these sorts of events, they're going to make you pay for any misstep, and potentially England will look back the couple that they did make.
I think it's quite. I'd love if the conclusion out of this match is that England haven't been going hard enough because that has been their kind of the ultimate criticism of them of late. So they haven't been batting smart enough. Whereas here they had Ben Duckett kind of bat through to the end, kind of make sure that they had a score and a very sizable score on the board in that. I think on the topic of the balance of the side, I mean, where do they go? Because on the one hand, Australia have the exact same balance. They've got Ben Dwarshuis coming in at 8, or maybe Nathan Ellis. Those are bowlers. They're bowlers who can bat a bit, but they're absolutely not all rounders. And if England wanted to go away and make sure they had that fifth bowler, that in this squad is Jamie Overton. Then he would have to be batting at 7, and you are kind of disrupting that balance again. There was a moment where I think I spent the whole of Australia's chase saying England will win. Don't worry. It's too many. 350, just so many things have to go right. And I felt like that until the moment where Jofra Archer dropped Alex Carey by the deep mid-wicket boundary. And I actually quite enjoyed this from Archer because he actually gave up a second run in the moments of him kind of like, what's the word? Mourning his dropped catch. And then the following ball, it was the last ball of the over, he then comes into the attack and Josh Inglis, and a moment where it's like Jofra Archer could be taking back the momentum here. I've just dropped the catch, but I'm going to win us the match. Inglis goes for the high-risk reverse ramp, sticks him over third man for, I think, 4. And in that moment, I went, they've won. Like the kind of mental battle, the mental kind of feeling of the game was such that now it was Australia in the driving seat. And they just went away. I think Josh Inglis and Matt Short today, their ability against the short ball and kind of peppering the fans, in effect, they were facing high-speed bowling, and every time someone seemed to drop short today, they went into the fence. And just in terms of an innings, was English your favourite innings today, or was there other kind of batters that stood out for you where you went, that was fun, that was my favourite bit?
I think Josh Inglis's innings was also it was obviously the standout, but I think the fact that he had Alex Carey with him for that partnership, I do think at one point I thought maybe if Alex Carey hung around, he'd be the player of the match simply because of his contribution in the field as well.
Mm.
How he essentially took England on after the loss of those early wickets because Australia lost 2 wickets twice, and each of those occasions I too thought the game was over. I thought the game was over when the first 2 wickets fell, and
Yeah.
then after that partnership was built, and then 2 more wickets fell, I thought potentially because Australia had this long tail where once Maxwell got out, there's not too much batting, especially at the required rate that they needed. They didn't quite have that. So I thought potentially Australia had lost that game those two times. But at the same time, I don't judge people for worrying about Australia in ICC events. There is a sense of inevitability. It's a bit like I hate to use this example, but I can't be drawn away from it. It's like Real Madrid in the Champions League. They might not even be a very good side, but they keep finding a way to win the games that matter. And you'll keep thinking about whether they are actually quite a good side while they're celebrating with the trophy. And that to me is Australia in these sorts of events. So in one way, you can never really relax when Australia are chasing and they still have, even if they're just about hanging on. But then with every boundary that was struck after the dropped catch, you could sort of see the wheels coming off England and the belief sort of sapping away. And Australia in these sorts of moments, if they know they're going to win, then I guess to use that cliche, success breeds success.
One other bit of the game where I want to just highlight before we move on to the Hall of Fame. Adam Zampa, England were 201 for 2 at the end of the 31st over. From that point, you go, well, why aren't they getting 400? Why isn't that 400 being turned into 450? He gets Joe Root LBW, and then Harry Brook, who struggles against spin, continue, fell a couple of overs later. And Zampa, in that crucial middle overs period where the game's meant to just almost hit sim game, picks up two of England's best batters, hits the brakes on the innings, and then basically, I just want a little bookmark, one to come back to later. Brook has got 150 in his last 11 for innings. And Jofra Archer had another tough outing today after a pretty tough T20 series against India, where I think for the first time in his career, he's really kind of leaking runs. I'm not casting either of them off to the scrapyard or anything like that. I'm just saying, keep an eye. If England's two kind of prodigies, golden boys, are struggling, that is worth noticing. Right. We're off for a break where you're going to hear a little bit about CBUS Super. We're back. It's the final word. Champions Trophy Daily, brought to you by McInnes Whisky. McInnes Whisky specialises in sourcing branded single malt Scotch whisky casks for investment purposes. And Cricinfo aren't allowed to talk about it at all. So I'm going to do all the talking about how good this whisky is. Like classic cars, whisky is known as a wasting asset, so the gains on it are tax-free. And what that means is it is free of capital gains tax, so you keep all the profit. Why Scotch whisky? Because Scotch whisky is the Ferrari of whiskies, so it has a much better chance of appreciation. I feel very wise when I do this ad read. This isn't about a quick buck. It's an investment. Buy up someone's birthday. Club in together with some mates. Go like in 10 years' time, let's crack this open or sell it and buy other stuff. It's a thing to enjoy, to invest in, to savour. Because you're with us, with Final Word, you get 20% off. And the way to get 20% off is you get in touch with them at sales@mckinneswhiskey.com and cite ICC Whisky Cricket 20. And cask prices start at £3,625 for a 2024 Tully Bardeen. And so when you think about it, 20% off is like 700 quid. That's loads. My maths is broadly right there. Anyway, Hall of Fame. Daniel, you can go first.
For me, it happened early this game, second over to be precise. Alex Carey hasn't been able to put a foot wrong since he took a dive in that Karachi swimming pool. And, there was another kind of dive today that set the tone for Australia and the high standards they'd set. Fielding at mid-on, at that second over, first over had gone for 12. England looked like they were off to a flyer. They essentially throws his right hand at it. And, it sticks. I've said before it's unfair to call those sticking because you have to do precisely the right thing to get the catch. So I think you should get the credit. I thought we wouldn't see a better catch this tournament than Glenn Phillips in that tournament opener, but immediately got competition. And for me, that was the play of the day. Second over into an almost 100 over game.
It was amazing. And he also then caught Brook diving away from himself. I hadn't kind of quite clocked. I was actually out. I was out having a net actually this morning. And I checked my phone. I went, Carey's taking a catch. So I just assumed they've been nicking people off. And I went, he's in the field. And I saw the catch. My mind was blown. Then he did it again with Harry Brook. Less exciting, but there we go. My Hall of Fame, I mentioned it earlier, Mark Woods for opening spell. His average speed was 151.2 kilometres per hour. Stats courtesy of CricViz. It's the quickest spell for England. It's the quickest ever in an ICC ODI tournament. It's the sixth quickest ODI spell in history. It was so much fun watching it. It was so much fun seeing Matthew Short kind of battle against it, because it's such kind of risk reward. You either look so stupid or you look like the best player in the world. Like, you miss one by miles, or you punch it off the back foot and it flies away. It was really exciting cricket. It was a really great match. England are now kind of one match away from getting knocked out. It's all a disaster. It's terrible. Australia's still winning everything. So basically, nothing's changed. It's all exactly the same. Right, I've been Cameron. Danyal's been Danyal. We'll be back tomorrow for the big one, India versus Pakistan. That has been in Dubai, and I imagine that'll be Daniel Norcross and Andrew Fidel Fernando, unless I've been mistaken. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you again tomorrow.